Spencer Brown is the Young America's Foundation spokesman. He routinely travels to colleges and universities to manage some contentious situations that arise out of YAF's campus lecture program, like our guy is going to speak, and helps out the YAF students around the country. He's also an opinion contributor for The Hill. It's good to see you again, Spencer. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. You know, I've been talking today about the images of the world that people have in their imaginations. And a lot of those images for people are formed in colleges where you guys do a lot of work sending people like Ben and me and Knowles to speak and sort of to counteract the left. But you have done a study that it may be one of the funniest studies I've ever seen. It's funny in a tragic way, of some of the classes that they are teaching people in colleges. Could you give me some of these? I mean, run down some of the colleges that are coming out, some of these courses that are being taught in college.
Yeah, so you mentioned it's funny, but also not funny at the same time. So the name of this report is actually Comedy and Tragedy, because while a lot of these course titles are pretty laughable, it's actually very tragic that this is what's considered an education today at these supposedly elite universities and colleges. And so we went through basically the top schools in the country, everything from the Ivy Leagues to the top 10 liberal arts school, the SEC, the Big Ten, and looked at what is in these course catalogs, because a lot of times people don't scratch under the surface to see what the actual course content is. And so what we found yet again in this year's report is just leftist ideas, leftist talking points. The idea of intersectionality continues to be used throughout. So it's basically just victim Olympics on a college campus, and how are your innate characteristics somehow make you more of a victim and therefore your opinion more important. And as we see in a lot of these courses, you've got classes about unsettling whiteness that talk about, you know, we should be wary of whiteness as a cultural institution or a social construct. And it's just, you know, if you're a white male, the odds are really against you on these college campuses, because they're teaching the next generation that your ideas shouldn't matter, you shouldn't be listened to, and you should get out of the way and let those who are less privileged have their day on campus.
It's quite amazing. I mean, I have a hard time imagining what it is like going into a class on whiteness, something which in a big way doesn't actually exist. Whiteness, you know, I mean, everybody, we're all such mutts in this country that the whole idea is ridiculous, and it's basically projecting the racism of white racists onto black people. It's making black people racist. Some of these classes, though, I mean, eco-queer feminist art practices. What the hell is that?
That's an excellent question. And that's where we get the comedy part of this, is what does that even mean? You're talking about, apparently you're taking the environmental side of it, but mixing it in with queer ideology, but also feminist ideology, and then applying that all to art. And again, it looks like if you read through, there's more than 250 courses in here, but if you read through them, they took basically what would have been a normal course, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and just added some crazy leftist word before it. So whether it be religion courses that are about queering God now, or economics courses that are about Marx being relevant in the 21st century and saying that we should try that in America, you know, we see the result of that. There's a lot of sort of new pressure towards trying out socialism in the United States, so much so that the president has had to clarify we will never be a socialist country. And so I think you're seeing now a lot of what's happened in the past, you know, 5 to 10 years on college campuses, where it's just this leftist indoctrination and not a real education. And as you mentioned, you know, we bring you guys in to speak on these college campuses because without these YAF lectures, students would never know that there's another way to think or another opportunity for them to get ahead in the world. They're basically taught, you know, that they're victims, and that is not a very aspirational message. So when you guys come in and say, hey, you have personal responsibility, if you pull yourself up by the bootstraps and work hard and make, you know, smart choices, not stupid ones, you can actually have the life that you want. But they're never taught that on campus.
You know, one of the things that YAF understands that I think a lot of conservatives do not is that the left is playing a long game. You know, we have these issues and we get all upset, and they introduce the Green New Deal, and we say, oh, this is the stupidest thing ever, and everybody laughs at the Green New Deal and makes fun of the, you know, Ocasio-Cortez's, you know, question thing, and it goes away, and we think, we've won, we've shown the people what a stupid thing this is. But these guys are now teaching a new generation that the Green New Deal is what they need, and that they need eco-queer feminist art, and it's long lasting. It's a longer view than we often have.
Well, and part of it is kind of this vicious cycle where one of the courses in our sort of our list of the worst offenders, we call it the Dirty Dozen. There's a course in there about Latinx sexual dissidence and guerrilla translation, which again, what on earth does that even mean?
What does that mean?
But if you're taking if you're taking courses like that, the only job you're going to be able to get is as a leftist professor teaching probably a similar class in the future. And so it's just this vicious cycle where liberal professors beget liberal students who then become the liberal professors and administrators that we then come up against. So it's definitely, as you mentioned, a long game, because they're really never going to run out of these people who are willing to continue teaching these flawed ideas, even though they've been debunked a million times. And I think it's interesting you raised AOC, because, people, they're looking at the Green New Deal and everybody's kind of poking fun at it, saying it's kind of a rocky rollout. But I think what that actually shows is one of the damaging effects of this kind of leftist one-sided education. And that is AOC it's not been that long since she was in school. And likely she learned all these same ideas, taking these courses about how capitalism has always and everywhere relied on racial, politics in order to keep people down, and that's the only reason capitalism survives, and all these other eco, queer, feminist, whatever. And what you see is her rolling this out and making sort of a splash on the national stage has been rocky, because I think she never had to defend these ideas on a college campus. She was taught one side. She only ever heard this side. Nobody ever asked her, can you prove it? Can you justify this? She was never faced with facts before she rolled it out on the national stage. And now you see people, on the left, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, are scrambling to try to be like, whoa, let's take a breath. This is not what we actually mean. And I think it's because she just never had that intellectual training to have to defend and stand up for her own ideas.
Yeah, she's offended. I mean, when you challenge her, you can see she's offended by the idea, as she put it. Why would you challenge me on my facts when the important thing is my beautiful, pristine morality, without understanding that you really can't be moral if you're not being moral about the facts. I mean, that's what makes morality is made out of. So you've sent poor Knowles off to Notre Dame, where they're threatening protests, right? I mean, because this is the other part of it. It's not just shaping imaginations; it's preventing imaginations from being shaped in ways you don't want. So to have Knowles running around Notre Dame is a dangerous prospect, I guess.
Well, I'm guessing that the eco-queer feminist art practices courses didn't deal with the Notre Dame murals at the Columbus murals at Notre Dame, but who knows?
Well, would you remind people what this is, just in case people don't know about the Columbus murals?
Yeah, so this happened, I guess probably it's been almost a month ago now, where the school announced that because of outcry from some vocal minority, they were going to hide these more than 100-year-old murals of Christopher Columbus on Notre Dame's campus that have been there, basically since the beginning of the school. And the murals were actually put up in the first place to push back on the anti-Catholic sentiment that was very prevalent at the time that Notre Dame was founded and started operating. And now, of course, you've got the revisionist history. The left is dragging up anything that anybody ever said, whether they're currently alive or dead, in order to point out how unwoke they were back, 100 or so years ago. Columbus's case, centuries ago. And so the school chose, instead of removing the murals, which are so a part of this building, they're just going to cover them with curtains. So that way they can present pictures of them elsewhere on campus in the proper context and setting. Because again, you wouldn't want to offend someone with a picture of an explorer from the 1400s.
Right. That's so Knowles is a big Christopher Columbus fan. He was on the show talking about how great he thought. So what are they planning to do are they going to torture him? I mean, I recommended they torture him, but what are they actually planning?
Well, yeah, no, it's going to be another great campus lecture there at Notre Dame, where he's going to go, directly into the center of this controversy and just bring the facts. Once again, the left doesn't care about the facts about why these murals are historic, why they were created in the first place, or anything like that. All they care about is the feelings, and they feel that it's a moral wrong or a moral injustice to people on their campus to have these up. So he's obviously going to come in and bring the facts. And I think, again, bring that other side, because students on the campus, if you look at any of the history classes in this year's comedy and tragedy report, it's all anti-colonial, all anti-everything that basically got this country started, and then, led to it growing and building and becoming the greatest country in the world. And so I think, this is going to provide a really important forum for actual debate, actual exchange of ideas that otherwise, wouldn't happen on that campus. The leaders at the school basically just said, we decided because a couple people complained that we're going to shut this down. We, of course, right as a response to that, issued our own petition and tripled the number of people who said they wanted to take them down, with people saying, no, they should be left up. It's a part of our history. So the school is not even in touch with the majority of its students' feelings on this.
I feel like they're abusing the kids because they deprive them of the actual view of the world, which is complex. I mean, people like Genghis Khan and Julius Caesar did terrible things, but they also spread culture, which we all benefit from. And when you step back far enough and look at them, you think, oh, well, actually, that turned out well, although it might not have turned out well in the moment for the people who were conquered or killed. that's complexity. That's the gray world that we live in. But when you tell them that, oh, this is all evil, and especially if the color of the skin was white, you're really depriving them of the power of thought. You're depriving them of the power to reason.
Well, yeah, and I think that just the ability to think critically about a situation, using the Socratic method at all, has been basically abandoned, because instead of teaching, I would be fine with these schools teaching courses on Marx or the history of Cuba if they actually taught the real, true, full picture and allowed students to make their own conclusions on the facts. Instead, they're only teaching them Marx has these great ideas. It's what we need to do. We need equality. But they never say, okay, well, here's what happened under Marx, and here's what Marxism leads to, and what the end goal is of that. Right. And instead with Cuba, instead of teaching all the horrible things, the human rights violations and everything else that happened under Castro, they just talk about how, oh, it's this nice little time capsule of the past, and it's all quaint and beautiful, and the Kardashians have been there. And it's like, no, that is not the facts. That is your version of the facts that you have cherry picked in order to push this leftist ideology. Instead, tell the whole picture and let students, use their brains that they're at college, hopefully, to grow.
Well, Spencer Brown from Young America's Foundation, you guys are doing a great job. You really are, and you're doing something very necessary. I hope you make some headway. Thanks for coming on. We'll talk to you again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.